What's up, Steelers fans? Welcome back to Around the Burgh. We're here to recap the Steelers' 36-28 Thursday night football loss to the Minnesota Vikings in a microcosm of the season, but also an extremely strange game. I'm your host, Mitchell Wolf, here with my co-host, Shayne Kubis. Shayne, how are we doing today?
You know, we're doing how we normally do, which is I'm just disappointed, Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
just it's every week it's something, right? Like even like last week we have the big win against the Ravens. We still have some problems to come out of that game. And we're like, all right, at least we got the W. We'll try to keep it going. And then that first half happened, and yeah, that's just where we're at.
Right. So I can't remember exactly when I tweeted. I think it was right around halftime. I said something to the effect
Yeah,
of, the Steelers just can't figure out how to be the same team, and that's why they're so frustrating. Because
yeah,
if they were just good, that'd be awesome,
awesome.
obviously.
Yeah, obviously,
But
yes.
if they were just bad, period, I'd be like, all right,
We
like
can
they're
work. We
bad.
can work with
Yeah,
that. We can work with that.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I can explain things. There's a common thread, and there are common threads to this team, but it's just so difficult to discuss this team because they're just so inconsistent. And I tweeted that, when the Steelers were down 23-0, and then of course the game ends up being a lot closer. So they couldn't even go a full game without being inconsistent, which is
Exactly.
crazy.
Yeah.
So
It's just
we normally kind of bounce around, but I think we'll go in a little more chronological order for this game. So the biggest issue was that for the better part of 3 quarters, the Steelers' run defense was probably the worst I've ever seen. And this is in a run of games where it has been pretty atrocious. I don't have the exact stat splits in front of me, but I think Dalvin Cook had 200 yards at the half or something.
I know
And
that we gave up whatever the number was. I think it was 180 something total rushing yards. It was the most given up in any one half this year. That much I know. That's definitely the case. I don't know the exact number. I can't remember it, but that was specifically said that it was the most yards in a single half rushing the ball this year.
yeah, I think they showed a stat on the game where it was oh man, it might have been games where Mike Tomlin has given up, I want to say 150 yards in the first half or something rushing.
Right.
And it was career or 234 games, 0, never done it. And then in the last 3 games, it's happened twice. So
Exactly. Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, this is a team that historically, obviously we're one of the better defensive, teams of all
Mm-hmm.
time, period. Just looking at it from a historical standpoint. And that's been our identity for as long as, we've been competitive in the
Mm-hmm.
NFL. And obviously we had some down years in the mid 2010s that we dealt with and stuff like that. But for the
And even
most
then, they
part,
were still solid against the run.
right, like we weren't abysmal against,
Yeah.
the run. Even the pass defense was never like actually worse than the league or anything like that. It was bad, but it was
Yeah.
it was manageable at times with
Yeah.
the offense we had. But
When you have Valentino Blake and
right, yeah,
Mike Mitchell and I don't
Artie
even remember who was
Burns.
before. Who was even before Artie Burns? I can't even remember.
I
Old
can't
William
remember.
Gay.
Pretty much, yeah. I think that was kind of the main thing. But
Yeah.
this team from a rush defense standpoint has never been this bad.
No.
I mean, ever. Period. At least not in any sort of modern time that we've been
Right.
around.
And as we've said repeatedly, a big part of this is injuries.
Yeah, it is.
Henry Mondo's getting a ton of snaps. Derek Tuska's out there a ton. But we're kind of at the point where that is a given, and those guys they're just going to be liabilities. It is what it is. But the guys around them aren't helping as much. Cam's doing what he can. TJ left the game early with that groin injury. Highsmith left the game later on. But this is a really tough game for Joe Sherbert. Even a bad game for Terrell Edmonds, who had that really bad run fit where Dalvin Cook just bounced it outside and took it for one of the easiest touchdowns I've ever seen. So it's all levels of the defense that just are not playing cohesively as a unit in run defense, which is the big problem.
And that's the thing that upsets me is we know the talent level isn't there right now with some of the guys that are out there. We understand that, but run defense is so much more about the being in the right place, making sure that you're hitting your gaps, that you're not giving wide open lanes. You can play good run defense without having these super talented players. That's something that there's a reason why a lot of the best run defenders in the sport are getting paid $2-3 million up front. You don't have to be this hyper talented guy. You just need to make sure that you know how to get in your fits and make sure everything's taken care of. That is not happening with anybody that's on the field right now. And if you can get away with not being, this elite run defense, you just can't give up gashing plays like we were giving up. That you can't do.
And I think at this point, you have to point I mean, I don't know. It's tough to say, but like I feel like at this point you have to point at coaching because
Yes,
these
absolutely.
issues are apparent. They've been persistent, and there hasn't been a change. And I think Mike Tomlin has said to the effect of, the definition of insanity is doing things repeatedly
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
expecting a change in a result. And there has not. And I granted this week it was a short week after a very emotional, close
Yeah.
divisional win, but the issues are it's the same players and the issues are still persisting, and there hasn't really been a change in the scheme. And it's just the same things are happening over and over and over again. And like I just feel like this has to fall. I mean, it has to fall on Tomlin somewhat as well, but it also has to fall on Keith Butler, who just I don't know what he's doing. Like he's just not making changes to how this defense is playing the run, and I don't understand why.
And that's why, like, I've heard a lot of discourse about, like, who should be gone, who shouldn't be gone. I just because I've had to deal with it for the entirety of the time I've been like doing anything like this. I don't like hearing anything about like Tomlin being gone because he's not going to be
Hmm.
gone,
Yeah,
regardless of whether you think he should be or not. He's not
right,
going to be.
exactly.
Like, and I don't think he should be. But even if I did, I would be smart enough to know he's not going anywhere.
Hmm.
So it's going to come down to the coaches around him and the people that he keeps around him need to change.
Hmm.
Canada can't come back, obviously. Butler, I don't think should be back either. It's run his course with him. I don't think this defense is going to get any better with him as the coach there. The
Right.
offensive line, every pretty much almost every group of this team right now, outside of maybe the receivers, but they have their own issues that we'll talk about later. There needs to be better coaching across all levels of this team right now, and that's
Yeah.
just kind of where we're at.
Yeah, and I think obviously the biggest problem was the run defense, but it's not like the pass defense in terms of coverage was much better. Like there,
No,
we talked a lot about how the Steelers need to double Justin Jefferson,
yes,
put Cam Sutton on him, put Minka over the top. And in the first few drives, I was like, okay, they've got a Keller Witherspoon on him, they've got Justin Lane on him, and every once in a while they'd have Sutton on him. But it was a lot of one-on-one coverage with and granted Jefferson is a deep threat, but a lot of cushion that just was like, what is going on? Like, how are they're choosing to leave him this open, which is a problem.
and like I don't know if their thought process was he's going to get his anyway, so maybe if we focus our attention other places, then Cousins will get frustrated if he can't hit
Yeah.
Jefferson consistently. And like, yeah, Cousins played a bad game, honestly, overall, and like they should have beat us a lot more than they
Hmm.
did between the drops and a couple really like tough catches, but still
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
makeable plays by Jefferson. And so they were off, which helped a lot as far as not giving up as many big plays in the passing game, at least too. But they didn't need it, and that's the thing is you can't let the Vikings go into a game and not be able to hit on their big passing plays and still be winning 29-0 at halftime.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
that's just despicable. It
yeah.
just
I
is.
mean, with Jefferson, like they targeted. I mean, where'd it go? They targeted him 14 times. He only caught 7 balls. He had one drop, and he didn't catch either of his contested catches. And I mean, the Steelers got bailed out multiple times by him not making
Exactly.
contested catches or dropping the ball in the red zone. Like there should have been more touchdowns early on.
Yes, exactly.
So they got bailed out by that. And I will say this: um, I thought the pass rush, despite losing T.J. Watt for most of the game and Alex Highsmith for a good chunk of it, I thought even though the pass rush didn't get any sacks, I thought they did a good job of pressuring Cousins. Like they did a lot of stunts and stuff. They were hitting him a good bit. I saw Wormley and
Yeah.
Charlton and those guys get in there a good bit. So I was like, okay, that's not too terrible. So I'm happy with that. But just
Yeah.
everything else was just so bad.
Well, this is one of those games that kind of illustrates that pressures matter a lot more than just pure sack
Hmm.
numbers because we didn't get him on the ground at any point for a sack, but we definitely affected him negatively multiple times in the pocket. And
Right.
with him, like I said, with Cousins playing the way he did, that is why we were able to ultimately get back in the games because they couldn't rely on the running game as much anymore, and then he couldn't hit on some of these passes, except for one that we'll talk about more.
Hmm.
But that's what allowed us to get back in the game was the fact that even though I didn't like the way we approached Jefferson, we did get bailed out by Cousins just not being able to hit him and find him most of the time.
Yeah, like I'm looking at these PFF numbers and they are extremely interesting. So when Cousins was kept clean, which was on 21 of his 33 dropbacks, he was 14 of 20, 216 yards, 2 touchdowns. Within his grade was 80, passing grade was 81.7. When he was under
Hmm.
pressure, which was 12 of his dropbacks, he threw 11 passes and none of them were complete, including 2
Exactly.
picks. And
Yeah.
and then if you look at blitzed versus not blitzed, so he was not blitzed on 20 of his dropbacks, 8 for 19, 108 yards, 2 picks. So when they didn't blitz him, obviously this is kind of the easy formula is like if you don't blitz, if you rush 4, you get pressure with 4, you can affect the quarterback and win games. And they were able to do that at points, which was like, all right, that's at
Yeah.
least decent to see. But like, they had that big bust to KJ Osborne late in the game, which was just that kind of put it out of reach, I think.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's one of those plays where like the coverage wasn't bad necessarily.
Mhm.
Sutton was with them. It looked a little bit like a push up, but it wasn't. Like realistically, it was a clean play.
Yeah.
It just that was the one throw the Cousins made that was perfect. In the game,
Mhm.
like that was really just him finding his guy and just making a perfect throw. So I can't be super mad about it. It's not like the Chargers touchdown we gave up that kind of put the game out of reach before.
Yeah.
It's a similar game situation, but it wasn't the same type of play where it was just like a bust in coverage. It was just a good play. But that was kind of the backbreaking moment because that was whenever we had a chance to really make this a game, even more than we ultimately did,
Mhm.
and just couldn't make the play at the time.
Yeah. All right. So with that, we'll switch to the offense for the first part of the game. So, you know, it's kind of the same old story from these last few weeks. First 7 drives went missed field goal, punt, 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 interception. Those drives totaled 79 yards on 33 plays, good for 2.39 yards per play. There were 4 3-and-outs and 5 sacks on the first 7 drives. So they just couldn't do anything. And the offensive line, this was one of their worst games in recent weeks. Obviously Ben got sacked a ton. He hasn't been pressured that much in recent weeks, so this was just a complete fiasco up front.
That first half was one of the worst offensive, like it was just one of the worst offensive showings I've ever seen by this team, and it's because the offensive line just could not figure out where anybody was coming from. Right, they
Hmm.
couldn't block everybody. Ben, I know at one point missed Harrison Smith on the blitz. I don't think he even saw that he was there, and they didn't have the numbers to pick him up. Even if he did, I'm not sure what they would have even done. They probably had to
Hmm.
call a timeout or something. It was just nothing was working. Green wasn't snapping the ball when he should have. The snaps were still high. There's been a lot of talk about him. We'll talk more about him, later on. But like, just everything about that first half, everything that could go wrong did. The interception wasn't. It was a tough play. It is what it is.
Hmm.
But like Ben, just you could tell he was just tired of it, and
Yeah,
he
Ben
and
was
he was just
not in a
getting
good mood.
clobbered every. I mean, they just kept bringing those blitzes up the A gaps, and like no one was touching anybody, and he was just getting clean. Like he's not going to get away from clean hits up the middle. It's just not going to happen anymore. He's not going to break those tackles. He's not going to evade that rusher anymore.
Hmm.
If they can't cover that up and they can't communicate and figure out where people are coming from, they're not going to. He's not going to be able to make the play for it anymore.
Yeah, and I think
And that's just what it is.
on individual reps, you could point to being all right. This one is Ben's fault. This one's the O line's
Yeah.
fault. This one's Najee's fault. Like the point is that there was just communication issues
Yes.
all across,
Exactly.
and the Vikings did a great job of they did the mug up the double A gap blitzes where
Yeah.
they'd put guys in the A gaps, and they'd put a lot of guys in the line, and they'd rush 4 and then drop out, or they drop like rush 7 or 8. They just mix all that up, and Ben just couldn't, or Ben and the offense line just couldn't really figure it out until late in the game. So that just really stopped the offense from doing anything. They couldn't run the ball super well, and like you mentioned, like Kendrick Green is really just kind of plateauing, if not regressing at this point.
They did exactly what they should to a young offensive line
Yeah.
and a quarterback that isn't gelled with them. Is they just brought exotic stuff. They didn't do the same thing every time. They tried to mix up their looks, and whenever you do that to a team that doesn't have that communication with the line right now, this is what you see.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is more of an off-season thing, but I think they do need to explore moving Green to guard in the future. And there's been it's like well, instead of having bad setting of a bad guard, but I do think that removing that off of Green's plate will allow him to play faster and play better if he is playing guard. At this point, I'm not sure. Like obviously Hassenauer and Finney are hurt. Um, those aren't great players to begin with. So even if and when they do come back, I'm not sure if you bench Green. Maybe just to give him a week off. Just be like, all right, just sit down. Just watch what happens. Just take your mind off it. Take a break. I think that would be good for him, but I just don't know if they have the bodies to do that right now.
That's the problem. Is like I think it could be beneficial, but at the same time, like for him, I feel like they need to reevaluate what position is best for him in the offseason
Hmm.
based on what they can get at the offensive line. Like if they can't find a suitable upgrade for him, which I doubt they couldn't do if they really wanted to, but if they can't or if they really think that he can't turn the corner on it, then fine. But I do think he profiles better as a guard. It's what he has the most position snaps at college was a guard, so it makes
Hmm.
sense that he would be a better fit there. He has the athletic profile and everything you ask for to be a good guard if you need him to be, but
Hmm.
the whole offensive line just needs a whole entire revamp, and it's not obviously we're not going to see that till the offseason, but so many players, even Dotson, like we don't know about him at this point. Like if he comes back and can show more of what he showed last year, maybe we don't have to worry about him. But really outside of him, there's no real even sort of guarantees, and he's not even really that either at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you have him and Moore playing together long term,
Right,
like for at least a full season, I think they can get better.
right.
I'm not sure what they're doing with Chooks. I mean, Chooks has been pretty solid last
He's
few
been
weeks, to be
fine.
honest.
He has been.
Um,
He's been fine, which honestly, like, it's funny that he's the guy that probably has been
yeah,
at least the most consistent, you could argue.
yeah. And so like
It's
he might not because he's gonna. I think he's a free agent this year, so he might not demand that much on the market. So
yeah, I
maybe he just
doubt he
kind of
would.
comes
Yeah,
back on a cheap deal because then they can at least get some continuity there.
yeah.
Um, but with all that said, we'll now kind of flip the script as the Steelers
Mhm.
did. So late in the third quarter, the Steelers get the ball back after the Vikings kick a field goal after Ben threw his interception, which I think they did. I think Aikman did a good job identifying that. I think Johnson thought it was a run play, like
Yep.
a run RPO, and then he just didn't really know the ball was coming. So
Mhm.
it was a bit of an up and down game for Johnson. He had another drop and some missed contested catches, so that's not great for him, but he had some good plays too. But anyway, so Steelers get the ball back. Ben hits a big sideline pass to James Washington, and then he throws a quick touchdown to Najee. Steelers get the
Mhm.
Steelers on the board for the first time. And then next play, Vikings throw an interception to Akella Witherspoon, who's been a revelation these last 2 weeks.
Yeah, which I mean, I'm glad to see it. Obviously, I kind of wish it happened a little bit sooner. And
Hmm.
he has been a very streaky player for his entire
Hmm.
career. So like, hopefully we get him on a hot streak the rest of the season, and maybe he can get some confidence going. But definitely good to see that from him.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's like from what I understand from 49ers fans, like, he'll have, 3 good games and then he'll just
Hmm.
completely fall off the map. So
Yeah.
we'll
So
see how that goes. But so they get the interception, Steelers drive down, get another touchdown, Vikings punt. Ben hits 2 deep passes to Deontay and James Washington, the latter for a touchdown. And this is kind of one of the inflection points among Steelers Twitters. After that touchdown to get it to, I guess that would be 29-20, the Steelers like
yeah,
to go for 2 and they don't get it.
yeah, because the play call sucks.
Yeah, I think that's the bigger issue because
That's
again,
play
like
call sucks.
from what I saw from like the analytics people that I follow on Twitter, it seemed like going for 2 was the solid move there. Like that was
Yeah,
the right call.
I don't hate the decision at all. I
No.
think because then like what do we need,
Hmm.
right? Like you
Yeah.
don't have to wait till later in the game if it even happens to know if we need the 2 point or not. I
Yeah.
don't have a problem with, but they need to stop calling plays behind the line of scrimmage when you need
Hmm.
2 yards. Okay, I understand like you're trying to get people in space, all that good stuff. Just run a play.
Yeah.
Okay, just let Ben just go up there and be like, all right, we're gonna run this and we're gonna do it. Like you have Pat Fryermuth, you have Deontay Johnson, who from a body control standpoint, he can get those
Hmm.
contested catches on the sideline. You have somebody we'll talk about more, Chase Claypool. You have these guys who should be able to make a play in the end zone if you need them to. You don't need to get cute with it, right?
Hmm.
I,
Yeah.
I would have taken a run there instead of that play. I would have
Yeah.
rather given it to Harris. Like that's the problem with it is the play calls in these situations.
The
are
weird thing
just
about Harris in this game is like he wasn't like getting a ton of help early in the game, and then late in the game he kind of just started bouncing runs from the outside immediately, which that's problematic long term. It worked in this game. I think that it was just kind of like, listen, like we got to get something going. I'm just going to bounce it and see what happens, and it worked a lot of the time. So good for him. But again, the line did start clearing some more holes late in
yeah,
the
it
game,
did.
so that's decent. So again, I think it was a toss up whether you want to go for 2 or go for the extra point there.
Yeah,
I just think the
yeah,
play call was bad as per usual.
yeah.
So then the problem is, as we mentioned, hang on. Yep, next play, next drive, Cousins hits KJ Osborne with that deep pass where
Yep.
Sutton got burned for another deep crosser route, which I think again, like the issue was there was not a lot of double coverage, and maybe they just felt like, okay, like we have a better chance with man coverage because they seem to be doing that a lot, which against a team that is known for running the play action deep crossers, I don't really understand.
Nope.
So I just don't really get what
I
Keith
don't get
Butler's
it.
approach there is. So that's just,
And
it is what it is.
Sutton is a player too that like not that he's terrible or anything like that, but he's disappointed me a lot because I felt like he was going to be a better player than he's been this year. And like
Yeah.
part of it's the secondary not being at full strength, and like Joe Hayden really, you really see how much he means to the secondary when he's not
Mhm.
there. And hopefully if he can get healthy down the stretch, we'll get to see more of some better secondary play. But it's just he hasn't been the player that I was hoping him to be.
Yeah.
So.
Now that I'm thinking about it based on this plays and how the other kind of plays went, I'm wondering if the strategy was kind of like what the Patriots do is we will put our quote best corner on the number 2 receiver and then just
Yeah.
double but they didn't even double Jefferson that much.
That's the problem. Is
Yeah.
that if you're going to do that, I'm okay with not putting your absolute best players on Jefferson, especially if you're going to double team him, because you don't necessarily have to do that to just keep him from killing you. It's the fact that they basically disregarded him at times, it felt like. And I'm like, you can't take a guy who's having the best 2-year stretch.
Who's arguably a top 5, who's a top 5 wide receiver in this league right now, arguably maybe top 3.
Like he's having the best start to a career, from a yards perspective of anyone. He's going to break
OBJ, yeah,
he's going to break his record for yards in 2 years. Now, granted, OBJ had 12 games, whatever.
Yeah.
Point is this guy is a generational talent so far to start his career. You can't ignore that. You can't do it. They chose to for a long time.
So after that, there's another inflection point. The Steelers they get the ball back, and they are facing a 4th and 1. And they're going for it on, I believe it was like their own 30-ish.
Something like that, yeah.
Let me find it. They're on their own 27. Or they're on their own, they're on their own 32. And they're going for it on a 4th and 3, and there's delay game penalty, which then they decide to punt. And some people were like, oh, like Mike Tomlin needs to go for it here. It's like, and eventually it did work out. And again, crosses over results, but, and I don't know exactly, I will see if I can find the win probability change, but I feel like if they go for it, they don't get it, the game is definitely over.
That's the problem. Is like I've really questioned their 4th down decisions all year. I mean, if you could go back and look at every tweet, every 4th down decision from the Steelers ATB Twitter, I'm like, what are you doing? But this is a situation where, because of the fact that they got the 5-yard penalty, even with the 4th and 3, I don't trust this football team to get 4th and 3 at this point. And like, especially in a gotta have a situation, I just don't trust them right now. So I would have been okay with them punting there, because there was still enough time where it wasn't like you're giving up the game completely at this point, especially with the way the Vikings offense was going at that point. I wasn't super concerned with that.
Yeah, because the defense, again, like the defense kind of turned it on in the second half. They kind of figured out how to stop the run.
At least well enough, yeah.
Yeah, they had the big busting coverage, but Cousins wasn't playing his best. And like I said, like Kelly Witherspoon was playing awesome. So the Steelers punt. Hang on, here we go. And then Cousins throws his other interception to Witherspoon, who has this big return, but he's like looking around, like not going full speed. And I was like, what is going on?
What he was doing, but I mean, I got to give him a lot of credit. That was a great read on the slant route, and he just played through it, and Cousins just threw it anyway. And I'm like, all right.
And credit on the first one. Credit to Devin Bush for playing that Tampa 2 linebacker in the pass deflection that popped up in the air for Witherspoon.
He did actually, from a pass coverage standpoint, he still had some pretty bad reps, obviously, but
I thought this was
he was good.
I think these are 2 games that he's strung together where he has not been the biggest liability.
Right, and honestly, like that's what I'm asking for, and I hate to say that I'm asking that for the guy that we drafted in the top 10, but like at the same time, like from a pass coverage standpoint, from the run defense, this team sucks on run defense. If he's bad in run defense, I'm gonna just I'm not gonna sit there and be like, oh my god, we can't defend the run because Devin Bush sucks. This whole team sucks at it right now.
Yeah.
If he's playing the pass better and he's improving that area, I'll take that, because that at least means that if we can get this team back healthy next year, the run defense is going to be better, and he'll be better by default with that being the case.
Yeah, like the last 2 games, he has not been the biggest issue in the run defense, and he's made some plays in pass coverage. So that I think that is encouraging. But anyway, so he throws it with interception to Witherspoon. Steelers get a touchdown to Pat Fryermuth, and they do get this 2-point conversion, which makes it 36-28. Yes. So, you got a 1-score game here. Vikings punt on the next drive, and then Steelers get the ball back with 2:16 left, and they're inside their own 5. And one of the first plays is Ben hits this like 40-yard bomb to Claypool, who's I couldn't even believe it. Like they called DPI, and then I'm like, he caught it. Oh, okay.
I had no idea he caught the football until after the replay, and I'm like, wait a second, they're not taking the penalty. And then I looked, I'm like, oh my god, he actually cleanly caught that ball. That's insane.
Yeah, I was just like, oh, okay, cool, we got the penalty. That's
I was fine with that.
Oh, he actually caught the ball. That's incredible.
Like, what? Crazy.
So they're moving the ball down the field. The time is kind of running down because they're out of timeouts. But at one point, they're facing a 4th and I want to say 3.
I think it was 4th.
It was 4th and 1. Okay, 4th and 1, and
the Claypool slant.
Yeah, and Ben hits this slant to Chase Claypool, and we'll dive into it later on.
Yeah,
in detail.
We'll talk more about it. Yeah.
Long story short, the Steelers have to spike the ball, and I think there's like 24 seconds left.
Something like that.
Yep, that's it. So then Ben hits 2 short passes to McLeod and Johnson, who get out of bounds.
That play by Johnson, I just want to mention.
Great play.
How he got out of bounds there, and
Insane.
how Patrick Peterson let him get out of bounds. Hilarious, and just literally one of those moments where you're like, yeah, that's why Johnson is the way he is. He just is stupid.
Like they when they hit him on those like kind of shallow crossers, like with a lot of room to operate, like he had one I think earlier in the game where it's like 3rd and 15 or maybe 2nd and 15. Like he didn't get all of it, but like he gets a lot of yardage on that. So
yeah, he does. He just makes these insane like cuts that guys just can't catch up with. So then they have to run him down eventually. And they do run him down eventually because there's too many guys in front. But like he gets way more yards than he should on some of those. It's insane.
So there's like 3 seconds left, I think, at this point. And Ben hits this perfect. I mean, a perfect throw to Muth. Right,
it could not have been any better.
Between 3 defenders, and Muth has it in his hands. But credit to Harrison Smith, makes the perfect punch out and just punches the ball out. Incomplete. Game is over. But I'm not faulting Ben or Freiermuth whatsoever on that play.
Not at all.
Perfect throw. Freiermuth had it in his hands. He was reeling in, and just Smith timed the punch and placed it perfectly. So he's an all-pro safety. He's one of the best safeties in the NFL for the last
decade.
15 years or so.
Yeah.
So that's a play by him. That he gets paid a lot of money too. Steelers do lose the game. Despite a furious 29-point comeback from down, or 28-point comeback down 29-0. But I think, like we were saying in the pre-show, there were just too many early mistakes, both on offense and defense, that just if they had made 1 or 2 more plays on either side of the ball, maybe they win this game.
And that's the part that's frustrating, right? Is like it got to a point where, even as dumb as it sounds, a team that was down 29 at the half, I felt like should have won the game.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's especially as the second half was continuing on. It felt more and more, I'm like, this is a game that the Steelers should be able to win.
Mm-hmm.
And they very easily could have. I mean, this came down to really the last play, barring a 2-point conversion. And yeah, I've seen a lot of people talk about, like, most people have been smart enough to not blame Freiermuth, but I have seen some people say that it was a clean drop and like stupid stuff like that. And I'm like, if you watch the replay, first of all, like you said, Harrison Smith is the reason why he doesn't catch that football. If Harrison Smith just hits him, or just is in the play in some way, and any other way other than punching the ball, he catches that pass. It's a touchdown.
For what it's worth, this is a completely different play, but there was a play where, and I can't remember exactly what happened at the end of the drive. I would imagine the Vikings scored. But there was a play where Cousins threw to, I want to say, Osborne in the back of the end zone.
Oh, or Minka.
And Minka hit him perfectly, and they somehow flagged it. It was shoulder to the chest, no helmet-to-helmet contact, and they called unnecessary roughness on 3rd and goal. I was just like, I just don't know what we're doing here.
It wasn't even like it's not just that it was a clean hit, right?
Yeah.
It's that if the NFL wanted to make a clinic tape on how to hit a receiver in the NFL in the modern era, that would be a play that would be in the highlight reel.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree that play is like, this is what we want you to do. If you were going to lay a hit on a receiver like that, this is how you do it in an ideal situation, right? And the ref was staring him down, and and it's like, I understand their instinct, like, you see a hit like that, it's their instinct. But that's whenever if you throw the flag, you think about what you just saw, and you go, you know what? Never mind. I'm picking the flag up. They did it on the pass interference. They almost called on Fitzpatrick late in the game too.
Yeah,
they picked up the flag, which they should have.
Yeah, that
was the more egregious play that they should have picked the flag up on. Realistically,
yeah. So. I mean, another play where Minka, I think that was perfect coverage technically. Like he made a little contact, but there was no holding.
It didn't keep him from going after the football. It was just a bad toss by Cousins.
Yep,
exactly.
Just
didn't get him. So, all
right. So we're gonna dive into kind of a big issue segment. I think we've kind of ran the defensive, the run defense.
There's nothing
else
the ground. We can't say anything else.
We talked a lot about the offensive line too. Not much more can be said there. I do want to talk about Presley Harvin. It's been a rough season for our thick king.
I know,
to be honest, which does suck.
It sucks a lot.
And then we're kind of entering the point where it's not like, oh, he's got one boom and then a few like one shank, and then they're kind of all in the middle. They're all just kind of meh right now.
He's a middling punter at this point.
Yeah,
that's what he is. And like, I obviously hope he can turn around before the end of this year and get us a chance to be the guy moving forward. But like, he hasn't punted the way that I would have expected him to. Just like, he doesn't have the distance that I was expecting. He doesn't have the control of the football that I was hoping for. And I'm not going to sit there and act like I'm a punting expert. I probably care more about it than
honestly
the average person does probably. But like, even then, I'm still like, yeah, just please kick the ball like far to not where they are. But like, at the same time, you can clearly see that he just isn't punting well, and hopefully he can work it out. But
yeah, I mean, I think the other issue, and we've talked a lot about Keith Butler and Matt Canada, and I think it might be time for Danny Smith too.
Yeah,
like Boswell is what he is, and I don't think that really has anything to do with Smith. But I was looking at the Steelers' return stats, and they're in the bottom 10 in both in terms of yards allowed. Return has been decent with McLeod. Obviously, Harvin has had his struggles. I'm looking at his stats now relative to the rest of the league. He's 15th in hang time, which is solid.
Fine.
Let's see for his yards per punt. Not looking good right now.
I had to guess. If I had to guess, he's bottom 10 at least.
He's 32nd
Okay, so he's
in
worth it.
average punt. He is 32nd in net yards.
Okay.
Let's see where he is. He's 8th. He's tied for 8th in punts inside the 20.
Yeah, he doesn't do a bad job of that. And like I will say a lot of the problem is like as much as we do go 3 and out more than we ever should, like he doesn't always have a ton of like big fields to kick on. Like he doesn't have a ton of times where he's going to have a bunch of yards available. But the shanks definitely bring down his average by a lot, which is the problem.
He's 15th in yards per return, so that's actually not as terrible as I
No,
thought.
not bad.
He does lead the NFL in punts out of bounds, which some are good, some are bad.
Right. That's
because a lot of his shanks obviously go out of bounds.
Yeah.
Where is he? He's 10th, tied for 10th in fair catches. So that's solid. Yeah, I mean the stats are good, but I mean there's just so many shanks that are just like
he needs to be able to consistently keep the ball in bounds when they want him to keep the ball in bounds, right?
Exactly.
Like if there's a position where if there's a spot where he can target where it's going to still be like inside the 20, obviously, or whatever, then it's whatever. But too many of these are just getting off the side of his foot, or just it's not. Something's not right with them, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
You can tell.
All right, so now we'll get into the big issue.
The big issue. We'll call it that.
So this is the Chase Claypool segment. So as we mentioned, there was the big problem where on that 4th and 1, then hits him on a slant. Claypool gets up. There's about 34 seconds left. Time is running, obviously, and Claypool kind of gets up, pauses, does the first down signal, and the clock is running. And Turner runs over to him and is trying to get the ball, and Claypool kind of reacts negatively.
Great. Yeah, not in a super positive way.
He seems confused as to why Turner's doing what he's doing. At this point, also, for what it's worth, Eric Kendricks has knocked the ball out and away from the play.
Yes.
Not that matters because Claypool should have just, found the ref immediately.
Yeah.
This is on top of an earlier point in the game where Claypool was called for taunting. I think you could make the argument that could have gone the opposite way, given that.
Yeah, you could have.
Breland, I think, hit him out of bounds or, kind of shoved him. And then Claypool pushed him back and then Breland pushed him again. They called Claypool for some reason, which was kind of odd.
Yeah, I was surprised of the call, but at the same time, it was still poor decision-making by Chase, for sure.
And then on the following drive, or at least maybe 2 drives later, because they did bench him for a little bit.
Yeah.
He almost committed a fumble, reaching the ball out, but luckily got his shin down at the last second. But yeah, it was, the game. This was, I think I said that this was the equivalent of Deontay's Bills game from last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Where his brain just left his body.
Shut off completely.
Yeah.
And so I'll say this right away. So, and this is something that I think we've talked about this, previously on here, is that when it comes to Claypool and, to a much lesser extent, especially now with him being injured and it's not talked as much about Juju, I don't care what these guys do off the field as far as if they want to be personalities, if they want to do whatever. I just don't care about it much. If you're not doing something either illegal or just so stupid that it literally.
I would say as long as you're doing your job on the field in the facility and you're not actively doing illegal things or hurting people, I don't really care.
I don't care. The people who harp on them constantly for that, they just need to get over themselves. Personally, that's just my opinion.
You mentioned this earlier. You have a friend who's kind of these guys aren't Steelers players. It's may I remind you that Frenchie Fuqua in the 70s wore a gold cape and clear platform heels with goldfish in water in the heels. And I don't think we even want to get into what Terry Bradshaw was doing during his spare time in the 70s. We just didn't know about it back then.
Right. It's just not a conversation worth having. I don't care what these guys are off the field again. And like I said, unless they're doing something they legitimately shouldn't be doing or whatever else, they can be whoever they want to be. These are still people at the end of the day. And a lot of fans, I think, don't think about players that way. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is right now. But if it bleeds onto the field, this is then where I will be critical of Claypool or any other player that you could tell his mind's not in the right spot. He's not thinking about the game the right way. He's not situationally aware. The fumble play, you don't need to stretch.
I would say it was 2nd and 3.
Yeah, 2nd and 3. I understand when you're trying to get first downs and you want to make every play you can. You got the catch. We're going to be 3rd and short. we theoretically, even though it's not always worked out that way, we have a 240-pound running back that we can
Mhm.
hand the ball off to, or whatever. You don't need to make that decision at that point in the game when things are already going poorly. That's
Mhm.
the first thing. The penalty is, like I said, it could have gone either way. It's still a bad decision by him. And just overall, that first half was just abysmal for him from a
Mhm.
mentality standpoint, from an understanding of what's happening.
Mhm.
Then he comes out and he starts to make amends for that. He makes the huge plays. He
Yeah,
gets the
everything
fourth down
between the
play.
fumble and that
Right,
slant is
exactly.
great.
And I mean, he did. The only other thing I can think of is he missed that one block on the third
Yeah,
down. That
that's
was
true.
bad. But whatever. I mean, it's still like
McLeod missed blocks, Johnson missed
it
blocks.
is what it is.
It
Yeah,
happens.
everybody sucked on the
Mhm.
blocking end today
Yeah,
for the most part.
because they
But
kept running toss sweep.
yeah, I don't which again, why are we whatever, that's beside the point.
Yeah.
But then he, like I said, he comes back in the second half. He's making these big plays. He's part of the reason why we're coming back.
Mhm.
And then he has to, for whatever reason, he has to point for the first down.
Mhm.
And again, how much time did we lose? It was enough that it mattered a lot,
I
right?
think somebody said maybe 8 seconds.
Right. It's like it mattered
That's
at
another
the end of
play.
the day.
Yep.
Right. Exactly. It mattered. But again, in that situation, you make an important play. That's great. It doesn't matter. Nothing's changed the outcome of
Mhm.
this game yet. You
Mhm.
get it. You get the opportunity to keep playing because it's a fourth down play. That's great. You don't have any timeouts. The clock is running. You
Mhm.
have to just your immediate thought has to be, okay, I have the first down. Where's the ref? That has to, like, that's what you have to think of in that situation. And
Also,
he didn't
he's
do it.
on the hash mark. Like, just put
Right.
the ball on the
Like,
ground.
literally just put it down and let them figure it out.
Let the
That's like,
Vikings kick the ball away and get a
or
penalty.
something. Right.
Yeah.
Anything.
Mhm.
Anything he could have done other than what he did would have been a better decision. Obviously, other than
Yeah.
like actually like full on celebrating or
Yeah.
something stupid.
Like and I think the guy from DK Pittsburgh Sports, he has a bit of a complicated name, but he was the one who asked
Yes.
Claypool after the game about it. And I didn't love Claypool's answer.
No, I did not either. No.
And the answer to that question and how he should have acted was, as soon as I was tackled, I got up and looked for the ref and sprinted towards him to give him the ball. That should be your only answer and your only
Yes.
response in that scenario. And somebody posted the clip of Larry Fitzgerald doing the same thing
Yes.
a few years ago. Now, granted, that was when Larry Fitzgerald was 37, had been in the league for 15 years. Claypool's in his second season. Yeah.
Yes.
So, but regardless, and I thought maybe it's like, well, maybe he's like, his mind is still in college rules where, the clock stops,
Yeah.
but still go find the ref.
That's still bad. Like, it doesn't,
Yeah.
like, there's no, the easiest way to put this is there's no scenario that makes it a good thing that he
No.
did this. Like, there's no scenario where, like, again, if he somehow doesn't know that the clock keeps running, that's really bad on both
Mhm.
him and probably coaching
Yeah.
in that situation. If he just doesn't realize, or if he's not thinking about the game situation enough to not know that he can't celebrate, that's bad.
Yep.
And his response, knowing what we saw and should have been, I made a mistake. I was hyped up after a big play to keep the game going. I should have just found the ref and gotten the ball so we could get the snap off.
Yeah.
That's the only response that would have been appropriate in the situation.
Yeah. He needed to take accountability for that mistake. And, I think so. The reaction has been, I would say, appropriate in terms of clowning him.
For the most part.
It does seem that there is, and I think the biggest one was the Ryan Clark comment on Get Up, where he said that Chase Claypool is mentally and emotionally underdeveloped as much as he is physically overdeveloped, which the last part was just kind of odd but funny. But a lot of people, I think I agree with what Ryan Clark was trying to say. I think he worded it poorly.
That's the problem.
I think what he was trying to say is that Chase Claypool is, he's emotionally immature, he's unprofessional, he's undisciplined. And I think if he had said that, I think it would have been fine.
Exactly.
But I think
the way he said it, that's the problem that I have with Ryan Clark a lot of the time. Is I like, as much as obviously he's a popular figure for a lot of reasons, playing for us, everything else. I'm not a fan of his by any means, as far as a person, as far as the personality, but there's things he says that I understand where he's trying to come from.
Mm-hmm.
This is a situation where, again, what his point actually was trying to be is not wrong. It's that he chose to say it in a way that was a personal attack on Claypool as a person, legitimately.
Yeah.
That's where, again, the wording is important here, right? The context of the situation, everybody knows what he actually was trying to say. That's not the problem. But when you call someone mentally underdeveloped,
yeah,
then you lost me there. Like, now your point to me, like, even if you're right, you're still wrong, in my opinion. Like, you need to choose your words better when you're trying to bring the point across that he did. And that's why I've tried to stay out of his, like, comments and replies to him for a lot of reasons, but that was one of those ones where I was like, listen, you can't be saying that stuff.
You also have to keep in mind that, I mean, he is an ESPN employee, and part of their
Yeah.
job is to,
Oh,
generate
for sure. Yeah.
engagement and interaction. So, I'm
He
not
does a good
I'm
job
not
of
sure that
that.
he again, I think that if he had to do it again, I think he would probably choose his words differently, but
I
I
imagine.
don't think he
Yeah.
regrets too much because it got a lot of engagement from people and
Oh,
discussion
he
going.
shouldn't
So
regret it. It's just
so
dumb.
that's part of it. It's part of the
It's
game.
like is what it is.
Um, I also I mean we talked about this earlier as well, is I think that and I think a lot of people might be realizing this now, is that drawing an equivalency between Chase Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster is it's a false
It is.
equivalency,
It is. Yeah.
because you can say all you want about Juju and his TikToks and all that stuff. I can think of one play where, I would say Juju was, possibly let his emotions get the better of him and affected it on the field. And it was when he took out Vontaze Burfict.
Yeah. Which even then, it's like it was still so satisfying
Yeah, exactly.
even though bad decision, bad
I think he
idea
got
to do
he
that.
got suspended for one game for that, right?
Something, yeah,
Yeah.
it's either that or he got fined or whatever.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, though, if you're a Steelers fan, how are you going to be mad at him for like that? If that's the worst thing he's ever done on the field, outside of like obviously he's had some fumble stuff like that,
Again,
but that's not a
and
mental thing.
and
That's just
people like Mark Madden like tried to make that as part of his thing, and I'm just like, no, like the Marlon Humphrey fumble in 2019, that's a Marlon Humphrey making a great play.
Yeah, Humphrey's great at that
Yeah,
type of
the
stuff.
one against the Saints,
yeah.
I think that's more. I don't think that was never the issue. And from all the reports you heard from people in the Steelers organization, that when he is in the building, and he's in the building a lot, is that he is a model player. Again, what he's doing outside of football is not hurting anybody. It is, that's
It's
just
not
how people are these days.
it's not our business to deal with. Like,
Yeah.
as fans, like we're fans of the football team.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, you can be fans of players individually. Like you can choose to whether or not you like Juju off the field. That's totally fine. If you don't like what he does off the field, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
But if you just say that like he isn't a Steeler or he's not a good football player because of that, then you're either just ignoring the fact of the matter and watching him play, or you want to be mad at him because you want to be mad at him. Like that's ultimately what it comes down to.
Yeah, the old men want to yell at the cloud.
Yes, exactly.
So there's been kind of some talk about this. Do you think that he should be benched, fined, punished in some other way for this upcoming game or for the rest of the season?
So I think that when it comes to the punishment aspect of this, right? What I think that Tomlin and the rest of the coaching staff needs to do is they need to sit down with him privately, right? Not in front of the team, because they're going to do that. Like in film sessions, they're going to talk about the mistakes he made. But they need to get a gauge of where is his headspace at? Is this a situation where they have to, work on certain aspects of the game with him? Like situationally, does he truly not know some of the things that seem to be an issue? Like, is it something that they need to boil down with him, or is his head just in general not in the right place, and he needs to just, like I said, whether he needs to sit and think about it, whether he needs to do extra things and whatever the case may be, they need to sit down with him and actually have a one-on-one situation with him and see where his head's at. That, and then you need to determine, okay, what do we need to do to get him in the right headspace? That's all that matters. I don't care what you need to do to get to that point.
So, and I think possibly Ben, maybe Trey Turner, maybe a guy like Eric Ebron should also be in that meeting.
They should be. And like Ben made the comment about like it's not his job to do that. And he's right. It is a coaching point. It's not his responsibility to make sure Chase knows what he's doing necessarily. But I think that he needs to be involved in it in some way, shape, or form. And I hope that he will be.
Yeah, because Ben needs to say, like, listen, like, this is my last year. Like, you are going to be a leader on this team moving forward. And
at some point,
you need to be
take responsibility.
Yeah. And maybe even like, maybe not because he's on the other side of the ball, but maybe a guy like Cam Hayward should be in that meeting too, just because Cam is kind of one of those, extremely important leaders on the team that can kind of say, like, listen, like, you need to.
Word carries a lot of weight.
Yeah. And, we have talked about, like, don't do wrong things outside the field. And there was that issue over the summer where Claypool got in a fight in LA. So I think that there is just, I think that a good amount of what Ryan Clark was saying was accurate. I think he just worded it poorly. I think there is a good amount of emotional immaturity.
He definitely is.
Coming from Chase Claypool.
That's not a problem at all.
And he does need to, quote, grow up a little bit, I think, and do it fast.
He needs to make a decision about what type of player he wants to be, right? He has all the physical talent, and people have said that. No one's questioning whether he can play or not. It's about, can he keep his head on straight consistently and actually focus on being the best wide receiver that he can be. And if he can do that, then he's going to be one of the leaders of this team on offense into the future, along with Johnson and Harris and those guys, Freiermuth. Like, they can be the core that this team needs moving into the future from an offensive weapon standpoint, but
Mhm.
only if he can actually buckle down and get it figured out on the field.
Yeah. And I think at this point, I think certain opponents know they can get in his head
Yes.
and kind of caught. Like, I mean, I don't think Bashad Breeland plays him that much. I think that was
No,
kind of just
but
an isolated incident, but I've seen kind of some stuff like kind of from players that people have found. Like, it seems like they know that he's kind of susceptible to getting poked and prodded, and that can
yes.
affect his play. So that's something he's got to get fixed. But in the meantime, we'll do our 3 stars, even though it was a rough game. I do want to give 2 honorable mentions to Minka Fitzpatrick and Cam Hayward, who have been just playing their butts off. It doesn't always show up great on the stat sheet, but Minka cut off a lot of those big runs that could have gone for touchdowns for Dalvin Cook. And he was visibly frustrated after some of them. Cam Hayward's trying his best, but he just doesn't have any help around him right now.
No, it's just he just doesn't have enough guys around him on the defensive line. It's too easy to pick on him and focus on him right now.
Yeah, and they're just running away from him at this point, basically, which is easy. So my 3rd star, I'm going to give it to James Washington, who had a lot of clutch catches in this game. He finally got on the field, especially when they were benching Claypool at certain points. He had a touchdown, big catches down the sideline, combat catches. So great to see him getting involved in the offense finally.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on that one with Washington. I think that he needs to be a bigger part of this offense, especially if Claypool is going to have his struggles and is going to have moments like this. I just expected him to be a bigger part of it anyway, and it's really been McLeod, which, I mean, it's nice to see McLeod get a chance to play offense, and he's done a really good job for the most part with it. But it's just been baffling to see Washington have no part in the offense. Like, I know he's not this big time separator. He's very specifically used in very kind of a weird receiver that we've talked about that. But he should be somebody that, Ben's familiar with. He should be able to be used more than he has been. And it was good to see him finally make an impact.
Yeah. And credit to him and most of the receiver room. I mean, they went 6 for 10 on contested catches in this game. Ray McLeod caught his 1 contested catch. Claypool and Washington each both caught 2 of 3. Johnson 1 of 2. So, not something that not something they're really known for, but something they were good in this game.
Yeah.
So is he your 3rd star as well?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Okay,
I
go ahead
to make sure to mention
Okay,
him.
okay, then go ahead and give your 2nd.
So I'm going to give it to Harris because as much as like the first half was a struggle just in general, and he did have some trouble in the pass blocking perspective, which I mean everybody did, so I can't really be too mad at him.
Yeah,
this was the second half really was sparked by the run game getting going finally, and us being able to use that. He had a couple big runs finally, and you talked about it before. Like, I don't want to see him be a guy that bust runs outside all the time, but if he can do it and it's going to help in the short term, he's a guy who's smart enough to know that he's not that outside, like, busted kind of player. He just will do it because he has the opportunity to. This isn't like a Saquon situation where he tries too hard to make big plays. It's I need to make something happen, and if I'm not going to go forward, I'm going to go around. That's basically what it was. So I'm glad to see him finally be more successful on that, and he did obviously have 2 touchdowns today, which is big too.
Yeah, that's my big worries about him kind of turning into what Saquon Barkley's become.
Yeah, which hopefully I think he's smart enough not to do that.
Yeah,
hopefully,
yeah. All right, so mine is gonna be Akella Witherspoon. Big game from him.
Huge.
I think sometimes the coverage scheme didn't put him in the best position, but targeted 9 times, which is kind of crazy, but he only allowed 4 catches for 43 yards. Only 7 yards allowed after catch total, and he had 2 picks, 19.4 passer rating against. So, a great game from him. 2 huge turnovers. Again, I really wish he could have ran that one back faster.
Yeah,
they did do the turnover run back celebration, which I hate from everybody.
Yeah, I just
especially down 29-7.
Yeah, it's just dumb, right? Like,
I'm just so sick of that.
It's weird, yeah.
Yeah, but great game from him. Really hope he can kind of keep that going.
Yeah.
For the last 4 games, I'm skeptical, but one can dream.
Especially if Hayden gets back healthy and you can play him and the 2 of them out on the outside and let Sutton maybe play more inside like he has most of his career. That might be helpful for sure.
Right. All right. So do we have the same 1st star as well?
Yeah, we have to give it to the old man.
Yeah.
I mean, he did everything he possibly could to bring us back in this game, and like it's really nice to see him playing a lot better for the most part. Outside of a couple games here and there the past 6-7 weeks, really since October, he's been a lot better, and it just sucks that it hasn't mattered that much. Like, obviously last game he did what he always does against the Ravens and everything, but like even this game, outside of the interception, which really wasn't like it wasn't a bad play, it was just broken play and just didn't work out. He was just excellent down the stretch.
Yeah, when he had a half decent pass protection.
Yeah, well, once he finally was like, I can stand here and actually throw the ball without getting smacked in the face. And it's funny because like that's the player he is at this point, right? We talked about it. If you can protect him with the weapons that we have, he's going to be able to find guys down the field in different parts of the field. And I keep bringing this up, and we keep mentioning it. At what point does Tomlin, even if he has to do it himself, just go to Kane and be like, listen, you can handle like the run game stuff, figuring all that out. Ben's the passing game at this point.
Yeah.
Like
Ben's
at what point does this happen? Like I know that clearly, and like they don't want to just like have Canada basically be like sort of like a puppet type of figure at this point, but like we see what happens when we get down in these games, and Ben is forced to have to just kind of run the offense and do what he's doing.
Yeah,
it's clearly better for him and for the receivers. Even Harris, like I said, the running game opened up a lot more in the second half once they had more of a threat of the passing game.
Yeah,
it needs to happen at some point if we want to try to make the rest of the season matter at all.
Yeah, I mean, so 28 of 40 for 308 yards, 3 touchdowns. If you adjust it now, I'll say this is a little weird. He is getting some passes batted. I think a lot of those are on screens.
Yeah, it was the screen game was bad.
Yeah,
which
is something I've praised Canada for in the past, mainly just because they've been designed better.
Right.
I think now there needs to be some kind of change with that because
Teams
of the lack of arm strength.
Yeah.
Because Ben just can't get it out there as fast as it needs to be.
Right.
So I think
it
that's
doesn't
part of
work
the
as
problem.
well.
Yeah, but I mean,
they need to have some shorter screens or like some more things where they're kind of inside, like where they're bringing the receiver down the line of scrimmage and then getting the ball. Like that's fine. Like the mid screen type of plays, like that's okay. But some of these longer passes out to the sideline, it just isn't getting there fast enough right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, like you said, another masterful effort from Ben to bring this team back from a point where they really should not have been in this game whatsoever.
No, they shouldn't have
been. But he's put together 2 really solid games now, back to back. He had a great game against the Chargers as well. If you want to count that, they had that Cincinnati game and there was a problem. But
yeah,
I mean, now the Steelers really, like we talked about last episode, their backs are against the wall now. They might be able to lose one more game, but that would probably knock them out of playoffs. If they do want to make the playoffs, they do need to go undefeated these last 4 games.
And again, it's such a tall order with this team because of the consistency issues and the defense still being undermanned at this point. Like, I think, and this is a question that like I hate having to even talk about this, and I hate like even bringing it up because I know people are going to be like, "Oh, of course you want to." Do we want to make the playoffs?
I wouldn't. But
like at this point, like because the problem I have with it is like obviously you want to let Ben have another shot at it in the playoffs if you can, and especially because he's held up in his end of the bargain for the most part for the past 2 months, really. But I just don't see this team beating anybody in the playoffs. Like I know the AFC is wide open. There's a bunch of teams that really aren't that truly good, and they're just trying to figure themselves out. So maybe this would be a year where like you could get hot and go through the gauntlet.
Yeah,
but I just don't. I don't trust the defense right now with the way they're playing. I don't trust the offensive line to give Ben enough of a chance, at least over the course of an entire game. I would hate for us to end up making the playoffs, getting blown out, or just embarrassed in the first game like last year, and then Ben leaves and it's over. Right? Like that honestly feels worse to me because you don't even get the benefit of like a higher pick to start the rebuild off with, or to start the reset with everything.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like obviously I'm going to root for this team to win every week. I'm not going to want them to lose, but like things would have to dramatically change on the defensive side, especially for me to be confident that we could win anything.
Yeah, I mean, like they could get Stephon Tuitt back, although at this point I don't know why he would do that.
I don't know what the situation is with like I haven't heard much about it at all, so I don't know if that's even a possibility.
And like they will probably get Hayden back soon,
probably,
which might be helpful. But I mean, at this point they'll probably just blow the hell out of the Titans this week because that would
probably
make no sense.
I mean, the Titans are in a rough spot as a team right now too, but like I don't. It's who knows. We don't know week to week what we're gonna get. That's the problem with it. Ultimately,
that's why you should listen to us. We don't know. We don't know anything.
We don't. I mean, nobody does, but we definitely don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I picked this team to win by 11 points because I just wanted them to at this point. Like that's where we're at. Like I'm predicting stuff to happen just because I hope it does, not because I think it will. Because no one knows what this team is going to do. At this point.
Yeah, that's pretty much
other than
right
come
now.
back down 20 points every time and still not win those.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about going to bed at halftime and I decided to stick it out, and it was fun.
Me too. I mean, I didn't tweet about it for a while just because I was tired of it, but then I was like, oh, this game might not be over.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
All right, cool.
All right, that's going to do it for us for this week. We'll be back later in the week to preview the next game against the Titans. In the meantime, Shayne, let people know where they can find you and your work.
Find me at Shayne Kubis on Twitter, like always. I do have some stuff planned, hopefully in a written format here with ATB as well here shortly. You can also find any time the Steelers are playing, obviously, or just anything's going on. You can find us at ATB Steelers on Twitter as well.
And I'm at Mitchell T. Wolf, WOLFE on Twitter. Like we've said, follow me there, follow Shane on his account, follow ATB Steelers, follow Around the Block on Twitch, YouTube, and
all the platforms.
All the platforms, Twitter. So then you can catch our live reactions to games, and we'll obviously have our preview episodes on the podcast feed. So thank you all for listening. We hope to have you back next time.